Welcome to section Enhancing the Game. In this section we're going to take a look at the scene system and how we go about creating our own, using animations in Android, and then using the accelerometer in our game. In this video we're going to go over scenes in our Android game. We'll be looking at creating an abstract scene management system and then creating different scenes for the main menu and the game. We're first going to create a scene interface, so go ahead and create a new Java class, but it's going to be of type interface because all we want to do is just create a set of methods that the scene is going to implement. And so these methods are going to be public void draw, and public void update, just as we've been doing so far, and also a public void terminate, a method that will run when we close our scene and move on to a new one. We also want our public void receive touch, and that's going to take in a motion event. From this we can then create a brand new scene. So we're going to create our gameplay scene. Okay, and it's going to implement that scene interface that we made. Now the reason we are splitting up our game into scenes is so that our code's not all in one class. So I can have the main menu as a separate screen, I can have this gameplay as a separate screen, I can have the help menu as a separate screen, and so forth. And it also reduces redundancies. Things like if I go into the game class here, so things like all this block of code and all this block of code, things like that, they now become redundant. Things like that don't have to be written twice over. They can all be written here, and we can just focus on the actual game logic and rendering in our scenes here. So just carry on overriding these implemented methods. Once we've done that, we can actually copy and paste this gameplay scene and rename it main menu scene. And now we have the template for our main menu scene here. We now need to create a scene manager, something that's going to handle all these scenes together. And we're just going to create a new class called scene manager. And the scene manager is going to have an array list, which will essentially be a list of all our active scenes. And it's also going to have an integer, which is going to act as the active scene. So this integer will keep track of what actually is our active scene that we are going to display to the screen and update. And then we can create a constructor, scene manager, and once the scene manager is initialized, we just want to make sure that the active scene is the first scene. So set active scene to 0. We then can add our scene, so scenes.add, and we can add our main menu scene, which becomes scene 0 because it was added first, and then we can add our gameplay scene. Now we need to add our overhead methods because we want this scene manager to render the current scene. Scenes.get active scene .draw, to grab whatever the active scene is and run its draw method. And we need to do the same for the update method. Again, same thing here really, we can just copy and paste and just change this to update. And we can do the same for receive touch. Now we have our scene manager set up. Now what we can actually start to do is, from our game class, we can start moving over things that should now be in our gameplay scene. So in our gameplay scene we should actually create a constructor, public gameplay scene, and we're going to cut and paste this section because these things need to be relevant for all scenes. However, these lines of code are only relevant to the gameplay scene. Import all the following. It's going to give us an error because we don't actually have that player and player point. So we can cut and paste that. What else? This motion event. We can grab this method that is relevant to our receive touch, because that's only relevant to the gameplay scene, and we can keep this return true here. The player draw is only relevant for the gameplay scene, and of course the player update as well. Now I'm just going to copy and paste this into our main menu scene. I'm just going to have it, if we touch the main menu scene, then just change it to this gameplay scene. How we're going to go about that is, when the main menu scene is just touched, we're going to run this terminate method. And terminate, what that's going to do is it's going to go into scene manager, and it's going to get the active scene and set it to 1. Because our main menu scene is 0 and our gameplay scene is 1, and we want to now set it to the gameplay scene. Now in our game, we need to actually add this scene manager in there, because at this moment in time, scene manager is just sitting there and not actually doing anything. Manager equals new scene manager. We now need to reference all these scene manager methods in the actual rendering panel. So we're going to go down here, and here we're going to call manager.receiveTouch and pass in that motion event. In the draw, after we've reset the canvas to white, we then want to manager.draw, and in the update method we just want to manager.update. And the manager itself will then handle what the active scene is and then run the method for that relevant scene. Now as you can see here, we have our blank main menu screen. If I then touch here, there we go, we are now presented with our game screen.